Consider just the first two bars of this 4-part harmony. What is really required in a step sequencer? Notice in the bass clef on the second bar, we have a situation where we have a dotted half note and an undotted half note, which overlap each other, and then we have 3/4 notes. In order to put this into a sequencer, you must have a quick way to switch between dotted notes and undotted notes. You also need to have a quick way to switch between your various note values: whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, 16th notes. In addition to that, you absolutely have to have a way to step back without deleting or with deleting, a way to step forward with or without advancing. I can't understand how the makers of sequencers don't seem to realize this and make simple and fast input methods in their machinery that will allow us to enter any type of complicated syncopation that we might decide to play. Here's a vintage QX5 sequencer from the 80s and still working beautifully. Now, as you can see, entering the information on this sequencer that we just spoke about is all a question of using these panel buttons here, which were multifunctional mode depending on whether you held down the shift key or not. But to make it easy, the makers included on the very top of the unit all the necessary information to keep your memory tickled, so that if you hadn't used it for a couple of weeks, you would not forget how to do the various operations that you wanted to do. And with a little practice, you could get fairly quick at entering your step sequences using this machine. It was the only one I had, and so I entered whole orchestral parts in step sequence using this machine. And although the workflow was fairly fast, it certainly was not ideal based on the requirements that I said just now. In Sonar by Cakewalk, they thought of everything, and you could use the shortcuts to get all of your functions of your step sequencer by simply using the number pad. And as you can see, the divide, multiply, minus, enter, 0, decimal point, and from 1 to 7 on your number pad allowed for very quick entry of your musical score with one hand while you played your MIDI keyboard with the other. The other beautiful thing about doing your step sequencing with Sonar is that in actual fact you don't even need to do a lot of fancy things. It's always in the record mode as long as you have the step sequencer button. You just press the record button, put it in step sequencer mode, and you can go on entering on any track by just doing the record enable, and it's beautiful. This is the best that I've seen so far. We now examine step sequencing on the Roland FA-06. First, you press the sequencer button. Now, you don't have to zero the sequencer, or mean start from a clean slate. You can in fact just add your notes, your step sequence notes, anywhere in any track between the current passages. So that means you can just put in a few step sequence notes, maybe for a solo or a lead. But assuming that you want to actually do an entire arrangement in step sequence mode, then you clear the song from the sequencer, which is what we're going to do now. To clear the song, which I've just done, you just hold down the shift button and select the button that's for song utility, and then a menu will come up. Song clear, enter. Are you sure? Yes. Boom, song is cleared. Okay, as you can see, we're already in track 1 with the full grand selected. So let's proceed to press the record button. And as you can see, one of the options at the bottom of the record setup screen is step record. You still have to make sure you have it set up the way you want here before going to step record. So we're going to turn loop off, loop switch off, and if you don't record the tempo, you can change the tempo. So let's not record the tempo. We don't need to sync rhythm patterns, and we don't need input quantize. So let us hit the step record button. Now all that comes up here is the record point, and clearly it's set to the beginning of your song, as you can see there in the window. So we just press start. Now here's where it really gets interesting, because we have a screen specifically for step recording that looks like our roll piano business. And down below you see that there are 3 main parameters and then several buttons that we can press. So the main parameters that we scroll between are the note type, the note value. Right there is an 1/8 of a note. How much gate time we want, if we're playing staccato or legato. We can adjust, if it's sort of like an organ voice and you want the notes to flow, you would go for 100%, and the more staccato you want, you would reduce it. Anywhere between 80% and 100% sounds great with piano voices, and if you need an even more staccato thing, you can go lower. But for most of my recordings, I keep my gate time somewhere between, usually between 90 and 95%. And of course the input velocity, if you want to use that, or if you want to alter it, generally I don't bother to step record with velocity. So I would just like set it to, I would just go through and set it to the full thing, 127 maximum pressure. And if you want to change the expressiveness of your playing later on, you can do event edit on specific ranges of notes to do that. So I'm just going to set it to 127 so that whether I hit the key soft or loud, it won't, the velocity will be recorded at maximum. I'm going to go back there and I'm going to change my gate time to say 90. Yeah, 95% usually allows for an off note, and it actually separates your notes. Or we put it at 90 today. And then the only thing that you really have to leave it on is the note type, and just rotate the wheel to get your quarter notes. But you see here now they have no dotting button, so notice there on the display where I went to a quarter note, so I had a dotted quarter note. It's sort of going in half, dotted quarter, dotted half, quarter. So it's not really, so I can get the quarter, I can get dotted or I can get undotted in increments there. So it's all done with the wheel button. Basically that's basically whether you want the note dotted or undotted or what note value you want, it's all done with the wheel button. And below it we have these buttons here: step back, tie, rest, untie, and forward and back step. Now I've entered some information using this, and I don't find it to be as quick and painless for complicated passages like the one I just showed you, the first 2 bars of that hymn, Fairest Lord Jesus. That's a good example. If you can enter that quickly in any step sequencer, you know it's a good workflow. So really and truly guys, I'm going to wrap up this show right now. All I would say is that the Sonar by Cakewalk step sequencer is the fastest entry one that I have discovered. Post your comments below and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.